And here we have the day after the opening of Steve Irvine's show, Trusting My Intuition. In 1968, Steve was taking the Sheridan course, and 50 years ago on his 16th birthday, which was yesterday, he opted and decided that his career was going to be as a maker in ceramic art. And we are very pleased to have his 50th anniversary show here. And last night, the place was filled with people from all over, and the red dot's a testament to the following that he has. So Steve, making that decision, what was it that prompted you to decide to become a ceramic artist?
Well, I was really lucky in growing up in a family that valued the arts very highly. So my mother was a potter, Barbara Irvine, and a painter as well. So our house was always filled with artists, people discussing what was important, what was right and wrong, and that sort of thing. We had great discussions. And we often spent a lot of time at the Royal Ontario Museum, seeing their fantastic ceramics collection there. And
don't I vaguely remember you telling me that your time at the ROM was, you were there so often that the guards actually knew you?
Yes, we used to, and the AGO and the Albright Knox, yes, the guards knew me by name when I was a little boy. We used to go there so often, so it was a very natural thing since we had a pottery studio in the house, and I had been helping mixing glazes and clay and that sort of thing, and making a few pieces of my own. So that on my 16th birthday, I decided that this would be a really great way to earn a living, to spend a life. I'd be able to be independent, run my own business, live in the country, which was really important to me, to do something creative that was involved physically challenging as well as mentally challenging. And there's so many different aspects to pottery. Of course, there's the making the things, but there's also writing, and there's craft organizations and glaze research and so on. So there are many different facets. So it's been a good decision. I was very happy the way things have worked out.
Now, one of the things, of course, that's fascinating is that often when we've had an artist's 50-year, last year we had Keith Campbell, and though there was a lot of new work, it was also very much a retrospective, and a number of the shows that we've had have been retrospectives. But everything in this room has been made in the past 2 years.
Right, yeah.
And, I mean, how many cubic square feet is your kiln?
The kiln's about 55 cubic feet.
And that is fired how often?
3 or 4 weeks.
Every 3 or 4 weeks.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Which, so very much, I mean, when you think Ruth Gowdy McKinley, who I know was an influence on,
yes.
on you, and the head of the ceramic department at Sheridan, she only fired her kiln, which was 14 cubic square feet, twice a year.
Yes.
So that becomes rather interesting. But what we learned today was, over here, we have a number of definitely functional art, because these are food safe, but hanging on the wall, abstract works of art. And you were telling us how many of these are made, not how many of these are made, but rather in the kiln.
Yes, I only have room for one in every firing, just because of the way the kiln's configured, and they're large round pieces in square shelves and so on. So just with my own setup, I usually just do one platter per firing. So maybe a dozen per year I would make.
And so here, and because I know that over the past 2 years since we decided to do this show, that you've been culling from
right.
the kiln. So these are the 8 pieces that you culled over from the over the past 2 years.
Yes, that's right.
And you mentioned the glazes, and I know that with you know, potter's glazes, but there's one of our clients who bought actually this piece has many pieces by a recently deceased American potter, and that's Sam Glick. And aren't some of the glazes in here?
John Glick.
John Glick, sorry,
yes.
not.
Well, this glaze, this blue glaze, for instance, that's on these pieces. John gave me the recipe for that in 1972.
Oh my God!
So I've been using this glaze just really in every single firing for the last 46 years.
Since you were 20.
Yeah.
Wow, that's pretty fascinating.
Yeah.
Now, and also, I mean, looking at this piece, you've elected to call this piece, I know that this piece, oh, Starry Night.
Starry Night, yeah.
And of course, it's somebody who's very much interested in, not interested, but one of the leading astrophysicists has bought
Yes,
this piece.
right, yeah.
When did your interest also develop in astronomy? Because I know that you've got
Yeah. Well, we're lucky where my wife Joan and I live out in the country on the Bruce Peninsula. The skies, there's next to zero light pollution. We can go out on a clear night and the sky is just absolutely filled with stars. It's just thousands and thousands of them. So it's just such a beautiful thing. It's just so engaging to be out at night. There's the sky and fireflies and northern lights, and it's wonderful going out. So
Wasn't that also the inspiration? Haven't you done the universe in miniature up there?
oh yes, yeah, a friend. Not the universe would be a big project. What we did was our solar system. So
Right.
a friend of mine who runs a public garden called Keppelcroft, he and I decided to make a scale model of our solar system based on about a kilometer. So I made a sun with gold leaf on it. It's about the size of a grapefruit. And little Pluto is about a kilometer away. It's about the size of a grain of sand.
And this is all on his property?
Yes.
So
right.
people can go and see our solar system?
That's right, yes. You can actually walk at the speed of light if you like, going from one.
Oh my God.
It takes 8 minutes from the sun to the earth. You can walk at the speed of light during the whole system.
I think you need to mention the name of that place again, because I know there are people that are going to be, otherwise they're going to be looking, but...
It's called Keppelcroft Gardens, and it's on the Bruce Peninsula, near Wyerton.
And when is that open?
Well, from May until Thanksgiving.
So if you really want to see something interesting and see how wide a ceramic artist's interest can be, you may want to pop up and see that. But not only looking at the universe, there's also the photography aspect. And I know that we've had a number of the Pinhole cameras, but there are only, you estimated that there might be 30 of them?
Oh, at the most, yeah.
Yeah. And here we have not only the Pinhole cameras, but we have photographs of the Pinhole cameras that have been taken with the camera.
Mm-hmm.
And what's
each image is what that camera has produced. So they take nice photographs.
This one in particular, I think that we can talk about, because this one, if you go for the duration of this show, this camera, the making of the camera, the setting up of the photograph is there. So was this specifically done to illustrate how?
Yes. A video documentary maker named Kenny McLaughlin asked me to talk about creative process and to talk about making one of these cameras. So it's just a short video of about 7 minutes, but it shows the whole process of starting just from a lump of clay through making the camera and actually setting up and taking the photograph with it. So.
And of course, and with this photograph here, can you just explain a little bit of the process of what you? This is like a maquette that you made.
Yes. Yeah. It's the sculpture in the interior would be maybe 15 centimeters tall. It's a reproduction of a Cycladic sculpture that I bought at the British Museum. But so I made this little scene for it to sit in. With Pinhole cameras have an unlimited depth of field, so there's no in-focus and out-focus part, so that you can have small maquettes and dioramas, and they look like the real thing because you don't have.
Well, this very much looks like the real thing. Yeah. I expect somebody to walk out at any moment.
Yes, but in fact, it was probably a setup about like so.
Yeah.
The whole thing. So it's really interesting and intriguing to do that as well. And then the negatives are made with photo paper. So the exposures are very long. So that was like a 20-minute, 30-minute exposure. Even in the bright sun, it might be a minute or a minute, 2 minutes. So
wow.
That changes time too, the way that time happens and behaves in the camera.
And then going from there, and then we have this body of work, which absolutely is fascinating, with the 23-karat gold leaf and the aluminum leaf. And I would say that inspiration comes from a little bit afar.
Could be. I like things that evoke some sort of a response, evoke a feeling.
Yeah.
Not necessarily a very clear narrative of what's going on, but something that can be open to interpretation.
Well, Darth Vader's already got a hold on that
Well,
one.
that could be. I mean, it also could be they could be destructive, or they could be maybe these are health rays that they're bathing the planet with to save the population.
Oh.
Maybe that's how they get Netflix in the other planet. I don't know.
Yeah, that's...
So it's open to however people see it. That's fine with me, how they want to interpret them.
Yeah, and this is... Am I right that these are jellyfish?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. I like them just because, well, they're fascinating creatures in themselves, but just the possibilities with form and pattern making is what really intrigued me with them.
So, can you just briefly explain the process here? So you've got taking it from the bisque form being after the initial firing, and then arriving at the pattern, like the...
Okay, after the initial bisque firing, then the pot is glazed with black glaze. All around where I'm not going to have pattern, or the background, or in some cases the foreground pattern, is all done in black glaze. And then it goes back into the kiln, and it's fired to cone 10, reduction, about 1300 Celsius. After it comes out of the kiln, I inspect it and make sure it hasn't cracked or chipped or anything like that. And if the pot's still good, then all of the places that were unglazed with black, I apply the gold leaf, or in this case, aluminum leaf here too.
Excuse me. So the whole time process, just in the decorating, like that seems like that's quite a few hours.
Oh yes, with some of the form, also just designing these patterns and so on too. They're all done in pencil and then glazed with the black glaze and then go on. So it might take, I don't know, 20 or 30 hours to do all the drawings. And then the black glaze, and then assuming that the pot makes it through, it might take another 15 or 20, 30 hours to apply the gold leaf and the aluminum as well.
So 30, 40 hours to do a pot, minimum.
Probably, yes.
And then, of course, you're looking at materials, you're looking at the cost of the energy, and that's $1,800. You did say about earning a living.
Yeah, well.
That's,
some
minimum wage doesn't mean a thing to you.
Some pots are better than others for earning a living.
Yeah. So, and now, moving from there, moving into over here into the crawl glaze. First of all, we were talking about this last night. Is this Mishima?
Yes, it's the same sort of idea. Yes, so it's a stamp pattern into the raw clay when it's still soft, and then it's covered with this slip, like a dark slip. When it dries, then the slip is scraped, and where it's been impressed with the pattern, the slip stays in the recessed areas.
Okay.
And then it's glazed in the light glaze.
And sometimes this is also done with wax, where they would have the wax and then they cut in.
For instance, in this case, I didn't use wax, I used latex, but it's the same idea. Mm-hmm. So this piece would be just after it's not fired yet, not even bisque fired, but just it's been thrown and made and it's dried out. I'll apply a pattern with latex, which is the same sort of idea as applying with wax. And then I'll put the black slip on it. The slip has got clay in it, so although it's colored clay, it will absorb into the unfired clay. And then once that's dried, I pull off all of the latex can just be pulled off like plastic. Mm-hmm. So it gives a nice crisp sort of line there, very, very sharp line that the wax doesn't always give. Then it's bisque fired and then it's glazed with the white glaze. Oh, wow. So where it's white, that's just the part that didn't have any slip touching it. And then in these areas, of course, is where the slip shines through or changes the white glaze to the blue glaze.
So is there an extra process here?
Well, this is the same sort of idea. This blue pattern was all done freehand, or there wasn't any wax or resisting involved. But it's the same sort of dark slip that was used here. Then it was bisque fired and then dipped in this pebbly sort of glaze here. Yeah. And then the bluish pattern, the slip pattern shines through.
Yeah, I love I absolutely love the face on this.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank
that's pretty amazing. And just before we close, over here, this glaze got extraordinary amount of attention, and obviously has been a very successful decorative technique for you. What is the process here, and what is the green glaze?
Okay. This is a very traditional Asian, Chinese, Japanese, Korean kind of glaze called a tomoko. It's usually called a tomoko. A very heavy iron.
That's the chocolate brown.
That's the brown, yes, the sort of the base glaze. Very commonly used. What I've done is to use a green glaze that's colored with chromium oxide. That's what gives this nice bright green. And it's been trailed on. I have it's like a bulb and a tube that I can squeeze, sort of squeeze the glaze onto the surface to make the patterns.
Like a little Moorcroft technique.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, very similar to that. Yeah.
Yeah. No, this is I absolutely, and I love the green and the chocolate.
Yeah,
and
I
green.
was really pleased with the way these turned out. So.
Well, as anyone watching this can see, this is an extraordinary show. Definitely worth seeing. Seeing what happens when a 16-year-old makes a decision to follow his passion. And this show will be open until the first week of December. And so please feel free to come down, make your selection while there's still a selection to be had. Steve, thank you so much.
Great.
And
Thank you,
happy
Jonathon.
belated
Yes,
birthday.
thanks
One
so
day
much.
later. Okay, thanks.